What is the Internet of Things? Is it hardware, software, or both? Well, chances are you already have it in your pocket. It might be on your wrist. Recently popular are fitness bands with accelerometers and gyroscopes to monitor our activities and heart rate. Now we have smartwatches which do all of that, play music, and they can answer messages. Smartphones and tablets have replaced maps, secretaries, alarm clocks, entertainment, and now they can control our homes, change the TV, the temperature, security, and lights all from your device. Our cars are even getting smarter with sensors to keep us safe. The Internet of Things is simply using technology to mimic the human experience and simplify life.
So hello everyone, welcome to Charlotte IoT. Dan unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight, so you're stuck with me. I apologize for that, but Dan's traveling, so we'll still have a really good time here tonight. So just a quick check on our members. We've now have 1,600 members in 74 different meetings. We were just quizzing the group that's here in Charlotte, when did the group start, but it was back in 2014, so we're going on 4.5 years of doing this meetup, and it's been a great time. When Dan's here, usually what he does is he talks about how awesome this board is that he gets to work with to do all this. So since Dan's not here tonight, I thought, hey, let's talk about Dan instead and the great job that he does. And just kind of a couple things that I think I've come to appreciate in working with Dan through the years is Dan's done two really good things for the Charlotte IoT group. One is he's kept it a technical group, though that's been a challenge at times. I think that's something that many who come to the meetup really appreciate. I know, Mike, you drive all the way from Raleigh and it's really because of the technical aspect of it. And we're always getting really new and interesting content for each meetup. And so Helium is here tonight. We're going to have some really interesting cutting edge type things that he's done. And Dan's always done a good job at keeping it fresh and keeping it that way. So all you other guys get commented about all the other time, but tonight I thought we'd share a few nice things about how Dan has helped us out in the group. If you want to follow us on Facebook or Instagram, you can, both at Charlotte IoT. And we're live streaming tonight on YouTube. We have our own YouTube channel. And if you want to watch points later, it's also recorded on that same YouTube channel, so you can check it out at Charlotte IoT on YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter and Slack. The Slack channel is very active, so if you have questions, I know Mike takes the lead in answering a lot of the questions for the group, so if you have any questions on IoT-related things, definitely hit us up on Slack. Tonight's sponsors, Helium. Dal came all the way from California to visit with us tonight, and so we're very glad to have them with us. They also paid for dinner for this evening, so we're appreciative of that. And obviously, Dan's company Logical Advantage was acquired with Pratt Miller a few months ago, and so he's been a big sponsor of this. And I work here at SnapAV. We've hosted the meeting for a number of years, and we've got a few slides to talk about kind of each of our companies real briefly. So Snap, first of all, quick little commercial about SnapAV. We're a product company that makes a number of IoT-related products in the audio-video space. I'm actually responsible for the Oversee platform, which is a software platform we've had for about 5 years that allows both our products and third-party products to connect to our cloud and allows our customers, who are your professional integrators or installers, to remotely manage all those products they sell. So take, for example, a power unit, a networking product, all of those are there. And actually, two of my colleagues are here tonight, Bill and Brandon. You guys want to raise your hand? Both of them are responsible for our networking, engineering, and test and validation piece. So they're here because they're very interested in networking-related items, and that's the subject of tonight. Oversee has grown significantly in the last almost 5 years. July, it'll be 5 years. We have over 3 million devices now talking to our cloud in about 200,000 locations, and always adding tens of thousands of devices each month to it. So it's been a fun and interesting challenge to play in the IoT space. Dan's company, Pratt Miller and Logical Advantage, they formed this partnership about 5 or 6 months ago, which is a really interesting play into IoT and all kinds of cool stuff Dan's playing with now with motorsports and defense and all kinds of things. And he's always hiring. There's a DevOps roles I think that he's actively looking for. So if you know or someone that you're knowledgeable is looking for an open opportunity, hit Dan up at his email address there. A few months ago, we started a separate part of the Charlotte IoT on the north side of town, and so the live stream goes up to that group, and then there's a group that congregate there each week. And so Chris, Joseph, if you happen to be on the north side of town and still want to attend the meetup, there's a location that you can do that there. And so we're happy to have them as part of the group also. They don't have to travel all the way down to the south side of Charlotte. Couple events that are upcoming. April 10th is up in Raleigh is a startup pitch night. It looks like seven different startups get to celebrate with Riot there on some of the events that they have. So mark that on your calendar if you happen to be up in the Raleigh area. L&L is doing an Industry 4.0, which if you're unfamiliar with that, it's a new approach to manufacturing. There's a lunch and learn on April 16th coming up. So that might be an interesting event that both Charlotte IoT and the Riot Group are hosting. And Maker Faire is coming up, Joseph, in October, right? Yeah. And you mentioned there's 2 events coming up before that, which are, I forget.
Asheville Maker Faire is this weekend.
Okay.
Burlington Maker Faire is next Saturday. And then October middle-ish is Charlotte.
So exciting stuff in the Maker Faire space. Also, UNCC has a Science and Technology Expo that's coming up, and it does have a date on there, April 10th, end of the month. Need volunteers if anyone is willing to do that to assist with IoT projects or games that they're doing there. So look, set your calendars for Sunday, April 28th as that one. Mark, you want to talk for a quick second about the SIM event?
I was actually going to do the expo.
Oh, well, go for it. You tell me better about what I was.
I'll just stand next to you.
Okay.
I won't make you feel short, so
Okay.
that's just all right.
Let's go down a little further.
Anyway, yeah, so the expo that's going to be at the UNC Charlotte, that's our Science and Technology Expo. We did this last year and had a lot of fun with it. If you guys have any projects on your workbench that you want to share, this is a good opportunity to do that. There's a lot of kids that come through and a lot of adults that come through. It's a kind of a full day event to prepare and set up and then shut down after the event is over with. It'll be again on the April 28th from 12 to 4. They actually fed us last year. I don't know if they'll do that again this year, but it's a really cool event. And it's an opportunity to fellowship with some of the fellow Charlotte IoTers. And this group does a good job of participating in some of these things that we have out there. If you're new to this group, I encourage you to get involved with the hackathons that we have. Jeremy Prophet does an excellent job with that. We have one going on right now to create a like an LED racetrack. I don't know how else to describe it. The idea is to create some LED games for the Maker Faire that's going to take place at the Discovery in the fall. So we'd love to have, if you're an expert in NeoPixel, familiar with Adafruit Library, we'd love to have you join us for some of the hackathons that we're going to have. But anyway, just to repeat, we've got this expo coming up on April 28th from 12 to 4, and we'd love to have you. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Just a couple more slides here. So the Sim Charlotte event is here. It's actually just right around the corner here in Arsley, if you're in the area. So I'm actually a member of Sim, and they always put on a good event. And so this is, I think this is their first time they're actually striking out on their own. So that'll be an event coming up on May 9th.
What's SIM?
SIM stands for the Society of Information Management. It's a national organization that has regional chapters. So the Charlotte chapter is, many of your CIOs are members of the SIM region. This is a really cool one. This is to have a festival dedicated. I believe it's a 3-day festival. Is that right? Or yeah, 3 full days. Here in Charlotte, a Linux festival is pretty interesting. So June 14th through 16th at the Sheraton Hotel near the airport. So mark that on your calendar. I don't know if there's cost associated with it. Does anyone?
No, it's free.
It's free?
You
It's a free 3-day event.
It's voluntary, and they encourage it, but
Okay.
it's free.
Well, that's really amazing. So mark that on your calendar. And then lastly, Dal's with us here tonight from Helium, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about decentralizing IoT and wireless, so all kinds of interesting stuff. So for those on the call, give us a couple minutes while we switch, and then we'll come right back online.
What is the Internet of Things? Is it hardware, software, or both? Well, chances are you already have it in your pocket. It might be on your wrist. Recently popular are fitness bands with accelerometers and gyroscopes to monitor our activities and heart rate. Now we have smartwatches which do all of that, play music, and they can answer messages. Smartphones and tablets have replaced maps, secretaries, alarm clocks, entertainment, and now they can control our homes, change the TV, the temperature, security, and lights all from your device. Our cars are even getting smarter with sensors to keep us safe. The Internet of Things is simply using technology to mimic the human experience and simplify life. What is the Internet of Things? Is it hardware, software, or both? Well, chances are you already have it in your pocket. It might be on your wrist. Recently popular are fitness bands with accelerometers and gyroscopes to monitor our activities and heart rate. Now we have smartwatches which do all of that, play music, and they can answer messages. Smartphones and tablets have replaced maps, secretaries, alarm clocks, entertainment, and now they can control our homes, change the TV, the temperature, security, and lights all from your device. Our cars are even getting smarter with sensors to keep us safe. The Internet of Things is simply using technology to mimic the human experience and simplify life. What is the Internet of Things? Is it hardware, software, or both? Well, chances are you already have it in your pocket. It might be on your wrist. Recently popular are fitness bands with accelerometers and gyroscopes to monitor our activities and heart rate. Now we have smartwatches which do all of this.
All right.
Hey, Graham, can I have your mic back?
Wasn't me. We good?
Can you count?
5, 4, 3. Okay. All right, we're back. Hopefully no more technical issues. So first of all, I'd like to thank Charlotte IoT Meetup, Dan, Graham, all the folks who made this possible. Helium's based in San Francisco, and typically we do not fly all the way to a place on the East Coast for a single meetup. And provide food. I don't know how you guys swung that. So we flew out here to give the presentation and we provided food. So Dan was actually very passionate. He recognized the technology and he was really excited about it. And so he said, look, you guys got to come out. We love the technology. We'd love it if you'd come out and share with our community. And we said, well, can we also throw in some food for you guys? And he said, yes, absolutely. So here we are. My name's Del Gemmel, and I'm the head of product marketing and planning for Helium. I've been at Helium for a little over a year. And before that, I was at a range of different size companies, all the way from startup and Fortune 500. So a couple logistic stuff, questions. It sounded like you guys are okay with taking questions in real time. So, you know, the group's at a reasonable size. If you guys have a question, don't wait till the end. Just kind of toss it my way. No heckling, of course. So we have these. In addition to flying out here and providing food, we brought some T-shirts, right? So these T-shirts will be given away, but there's a condition attached. So we'll talk about that later. But they're really good T-shirts. I think I've covered the logistics. All right. So you may not be aware, but there's actually a race going on to shape our future. And it's to decide how we connect and interact with our environment in new ways. So in a way that could make us safer, smarter, and more productive. But there's a problem. So not satisfied with just phones and computers, telcos want to control everything else. They want to control how we connect to billions of devices. They want to collect the data from all the interactions of our everyday life. So not to get too existential on you, but we believe this is what's going to happen. All right? But the race isn't lost yet, unlike with our phones and computers. So what if there was another way? What if there was a different approach that you could take, like Airbnb did with accommodations? So Airbnb is the largest accommodation provider in the world, but when was the last time you stayed in an Airbnb branded hotel? You haven't, right? So Airbnb said, look, rather than trying to compete head-on with Hilton, Hyatt, Marriott, what if we took all this excess capacity, because we know there's a lot of pent-up demand, and married the two together? So what if you could take that approach to create a brand new decentralized wireless network? One that was truly private, open, and sensor resistant. So this community built and owned network could provide ubiquitous, affordable coverage, and you'd unleash all these possibilities that just aren't available today, that would become commonplace. Not only that, you would have this new class of applications that would suddenly emerge, because you'd have a number of these entrepreneurs who would say, great, I don't have to worry about network infrastructure. I can worry about my application. I can start to design really cool things, like an early detection system for hurricanes, being able to identify the source of my food, my water, or never losing my pet or loved one again, because I'm able to track it for miles. So quickly about Helium. So Helium is a startup. We're based in San Francisco. We've been around since 2013. The original mission was, how do you simplify connecting things to the internet? The company is taking a number of pivots, and now we're back to building this horizontal platform. We have a number of respected venture capitalist companies that are backing us, including Google Ventures, Khosla Ventures, FirstMark, Mark Benioff, and others. So when we go to conferences, IoT conferences, we have this slogan on our wall that says IoT has failed. And it actually works really well, because if you go to an IT conference and you say IoT has failed, it actually turns heads. And people say, what? You're at an IoT conference, how can you say IoT has failed, right? We feel that a big reason why IoT has not lived up to its potential, maybe that's an easier way to digest it, not lived up to its potential, is because the networks that exist today were not built for IoT devices. They're just different use cases. So they're what we're calling inadequate for a new type of machines that we feel could really capture the potential of the Internet of Things. So what would this network look like, or what are some of the characteristics? Obviously range, being able to last for years on a single battery charge, non-proprietary or using open technologies, not saying that you're open, but then use proprietary chipsets, doing things like being able to provide location capabilities without using GPS. GPS is expensive and it hurts battery life. First question of the day.
So, does anybody argue with you when you say we don't have networks capable of IoT? There's an awful lot of RF networks for IoT that
Yep.
are edged and hubbed to the real internet as a backbone, and I assume that's where you're going. You're going to hub devices. And
Yep.
so there's LoRa, and there's all kinds of off
Sure.
telco networks, Bluetooth,
There's different approaches.
BLE, and what have you.
Yep.
And they solve these problems. When you say we don't have networks that do this, does anybody argue with you?
So what we're saying is we feel that IoT hasn't lived up to its potential, given all the hype. And one of the reasons why we feel that way is because connectivity and networks is a big factor. And so LoRa, so we'll talk about our approach, and then we can get into folks like LoRa and Sigfox and talk about how they're different. That work?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So if you're looking at creating this purpose-built network for IoT devices, or what we call machines, we feel there's actually two main approaches. One is you could try to become a mini telco yourself. So you could go and deploy a bunch of infrastructure, build a bunch of towers, and essentially try to become like a mini telco. Now, the problem with that is it's really expensive. It's going to take a long time to do. And then at the end of the day, what have you really accomplished? You've become a mini telco. And are you really better than a telco at that point? Right? So there are companies that are doing this, and it's a different approach, right? We don't think it's going to be successful. We feel a successful way is creating this decentralized wireless network. So taking this Airbnb approach to providing wireless services. So creating this community-built network where you incentivize anyone to participate, right? Now, I'm going to get into some of the incentives in a couple slides later on, but the idea is that anybody could participate. And so you build a community of individuals participating, deploying hotspots, and providing this wireless coverage. Coverage becomes ubiquitous, affordable, and the deployment time is very rapid. So you're not having to secure real estate rights and then construct towers. It's, okay, I buy a hotspot, I plug it in, I configure it, and now I'm providing coverage for squares of miles. So I just showed you guys the Helium hotspot. So this is getting close to our final version. This is still a test unit. Having said that, we have deployed a number of these in a number of different cities, providing coverage and using the network. So this hotspot, there's really two primary factors that it does. One is it will provide wireless coverage at low power. So we've optimized it for range and low power. We're not optimizing for throughput. So you would not be watching YouTube on these devices, right? That's not the use case that we were going for. We were going for small amounts of data to say, this is my location, this is the air quality, this is the temperature, etc. In addition to that, it is actually a node for a blockchain. So I talked about the incentive model. Part of the underlying technology to make that possible is a blockchain. If you want to do something truly decentralized, it's very difficult to do without a blockchain. When we were thinking about this project almost 2 years ago now, we're like, okay, if we're really going to go decentralized, then you need to use a blockchain. Let's assess the market and see what's out there and see what we can leverage, do a hard fork, and repurpose for our use cases. The problem was, at the time, there wasn't really a blockchain that fit our use cases. We looked at Ethereum. The idea of smart contracts, interesting. It would have been a lot quicker. Bitcoin's really optimized for financial transactions, but given what we are trying to do, things like microtransactions, scalability, taking data from the physical world, adding it to the blockchain, it wasn't going to work. So we actually had to build our own blockchain as well. Yep.
So is it a blockchain in that it's decentralized and public and nobody owns it? Or does Helium, the company, own the blockchain and it really doesn't need to be a blockchain?
The former.
Okay.
Because if Helium owned it, then it would be centralized, right?
I assume Helium, the company, though, has a profit motive in Helium, the network, right?
So we'll get to the business model, but if you want to quickly think about it, it's kind of like Red Hat and Linux. So Linux is open source,
So
anybody
you're
can
going to
use
support
it.
it. Okay, got
Provide
it.
services.
Okay.
Yep. So we talked about, so I'm talking to Matt, and I say, hey, Matt, the race is on. Join the community, buddy. And Matt's like, okay, sounds good, but what's in it for me? So we thought about this actually long and hard, and this problem is, there's two ways to describe it. One is the chicken or the egg, the other is the cold start problem. And the idea is if you've got a network and you've got applications, if you want to inspire or motivate a bunch of developers to start developing applications, they're like, well, what type of coverage do you have? And then if you try to get people to say, hey, you should participate and deploy a hotspot, and they'll say, well, what type of applications are running on the network? So you have this chicken and egg or cold start problem. Any type of two-sided or multi-sided market has the same problem. And so we said, well, there's got to be two ways that we reward or incent hotspot owners. One of them is kind of what you would think. Anytime a machine connects to your hotspot to the internet, then you get rewarded, right? You're providing the service. Somebody on the network is using the service. Yeah, I should get rewarded. Toll booth kind of model. But that doesn't solve the cold start problem, right? That doesn't solve the chicken and egg problem. Because if I'm just waiting for these machines to attach to my hotspot, how motivated am I going to be then to deploy these hotspots, and vice versa? So we said, well, we need to come up with a way that was independent of usage of the network to reward people who are participating. And so in addition to providing, like we said, in addition to providing the wireless coverage, this is also a miner. So this hotspot also mines tokens. So Glenn plugs in the hotspot. He's being a good actor, providing coverage for many square miles. He just happens to be an area that at the time is not that dense and there's not a lot of usage. But he shouldn't be punished for that. He's still providing coverage. And so just by providing coverage, he will also earn tokens. He'll also mine the native cryptocurrency for the blockchain. Now, for those of you familiar with blockchains and mining, typically it's very computational intensive. Because what you're doing is the act of mining is you're actually solving a number of these really tough algorithmic puzzles that continue to get tougher as the number of nodes increases. And there's no way that you could have enough computation power in something like this, right? Even if at the beginning you put in these huge processors, over time, it wouldn't work.
So I think that's just for proof of stake, not for all of the different consensus models.
Proof of stake, proof of work, right, which are probably the most famous.
Proof of stake, proof of work. And,
yep.
Yeah.
And so at the time, those were really the most successful consensus models out there. And we said it's just not going to work for us. So what we said was, let's come up with something. And there's a lot of unintended side effects that have come out of those type of models. Probably the most public one is the use of power. So there's huge amounts of power from these mining pools that basically is wasted. I mean, it's stopping, it's providing a level of security, so you can't do like a 51% attack, but all that power after you're solving the problem is not really contributing to the network. In addition, like I said, you have the creation of mining pools. So people can now buy a bunch of these NVIDIA cards, put them together, create these mining pools, go up to Finland or Iceland or wherever it's really cool and power's really cheap. But you know, the whole system was meant to be decentralized, but now you've got all the mining power in a few centralized mining pools. It's not really what it's meant to be. So we said, look, let's learn from that. Why? Let's not repeat mistakes of the past. And let's come up with a consensus model that includes what we call proof of coverage. So proof of coverage, some of the design goals that we were thinking about was make it useful. So the actual computation that's going into solving these problems is useful, however we're doing it. Make it energy efficient. We don't want to contribute to that problem. And then also make it fair, so that you can't just, Matt just can't buy 500 of these, stick them in a closet, and then go to the Bahamas somewhere and check out how many tokens he's generating, right? So proof of coverage, the way that we did it was Matt and Glenn both have hotspots. They're deployed, being good actors, providing coverage. The coverage that they're providing will be assessed by their peers, and it will validate that they are providing good coverage. Based on that quality of coverage, they will earn a score. And the highest scoring hotspots then get elected into the consensus group. And once they're in a consensus group for a certain duration of time, or an epoch, once they're in this consensus group, then they do the work of a consensus group. So they validate transactions, they publish blocks, they add blocks to a blockchain, and then they leave the consensus group and a new batch of hotspots are elected. So that way we keep it useful, so their score is based on the actual coverage that they're providing, energy efficient because there's no computational power that's going into it, and fair because if these guys said, hey, let's just buy a whole bunch and put them in a shed, it's not going to work because part of that score is location. So it couldn't be, if you tried to buy a bunch, put them together, the score is not going to be very good or very high. Okay, so let's see how this works. So I talked about the hotspot being a node on the blockchain. In addition to that, if you have a blockchain, then you need to have a wallet. So the team has done a lot of work creating our wallet. So I did this before and it worked, so fingers crossed. Demos. That's a Tesla being shot into space, by the way, if you didn't know. All right. So this is the Helium wallet on my phone. Let's see if that will disappear. And what you can see right away is a big number, so that's the number of tokens that I've got. Fortunately, I can't retire. This is still our alpha testnet. But there's an easy way to send and receive. In addition to that, I've already added my hotspot at my home. So this is where I've got it deployed. And I want to show something else. So this is our blockchain Explorer, and so you can see a number of these blocks that just keep getting added and added. So that's very quick demo. If you want to see more, you can come up to me after, but I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the work that the team has done putting together this wallet, and this through the app is also how you would onboard the hotspot. So we've tried to make this very streamlined and simple to get folks up and running. Yeah?
The problem with this consensus model is even the authenticity of the chain, you cannot guarantee it. Because the proof of work or proof of...
Coverage?
The proof of work approach, you create a cryptographic value that actually proves that this block belongs after the previous block. So cryptographically, you create a number that actually that when added to the block will hash and it will cause. So that proves the authenticity of the chain, right?
Yeah.
But then once you remove this concept from the picture, and you remove this hash idea from the picture, then
we're not removing the hash idea from the picture.
You make it easier. You are making it. So again, even if you make it easier, then you will see these new branches being created because it's very easy to create transactions now, right?
So we're not. So if you're talking about forking.
Sorry, I think he's just replacing the consensus algorithm from like Bitcoin and other. There's a proof of stake.
The consensus algorithm in these blockchains serves another purpose. It's not only consensus. It's to actually to verify the chain. The chain itself, if it's very easy to add to the chain, anybody will just add to the chain.
To prevent Sybil attacks.
Exactly.
That's right.
So basically, if you make it very easy to add to the chain, because if you remove the proof of work concept from the picture.
But we're not. Right? So we're not making it easy to add a block to the blockchain. We're using a different way to come up with cryptographically to provide that proof.
If you're not making it easy, then this means you don't need miners, right? So if you are making it very easy, you don't need the miners.
But
if you say, for example, you want people to have 2 0 bits, right? In that case, it's very easy to find a sequence that has 2 0 bits, right? That hashes to 0 bits.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we're making it easy, because if we were making it easy, then there is no point coming up with this proof of coverage, electing a consensus group, and then allowing them to do the work needed in order to validate transactions and publish blocks.
But again, even if you have the consensus group, they are still small routers that cannot process, do the processing required to actually have a...
But it's a very, so we can sync up offline,
okay.
but it's a very different type of concept in terms of how we're doing this. But the cryptographic proofs and things like a DKG or decentralized key generator, we still need to have those. Yeah. You can't get away, because you need those to counteract like BFT, like Byzantine fault tolerance, right? So we're not using a computational heavy type of proof of work, but we're still needing to use cryptography to prove that certain blocks belong to the blockchain. Anyway, so we can get into that after. We can come up and talk about it after. So I don't need to do that. So here's essentially what we're trying to do. We've got a community. Hotspots are providing this coverage. Now, ideally, now you have a bunch of ubiquitous coverage that attracts IoT developers to say, hey, great, now I don't have to worry about the network infrastructure. I can focus on my sensors and analyzing that data because you've made it very simple for me. So I'm just going to continue creating these applications. Once people who are thinking about participating in the network see, wow, there's a bunch of applications that are running on this network, I want to get involved. Hopefully that will, we believe, create this virtuous cycle.
So as a former carrier RF engineer, how do you do things like interference control if everybody in the neighborhood decides to throw up a hotspot? They can cover a couple of square miles, and you now have 40 radiation sources, in a small neighborhood. What kind of network is that going to provide?
So the density of the hotspots is still going to provide the same network. I'm not sure what.
He's saying, what if everybody wants to get into the helium business and
Right.
they all buy hotspots,
Yeah.
and now you've got the RF space completely overlapped and
So-
interferes with each other.
So we've got a software-defined radio in our hotspot, and so it's capable of channel hopping.
Channel hopping.
And that was a big consideration when we built it. Now, going back to your question, if everybody in a neighborhood, every neighborhood bought a helium hotspot, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, unless you got to go clear the spectrum, yeah.
But we do have SCR specifically focused on being able to channel hop. So this, we've been in this space for a while. One of the challenges of building like this horizontal platform or something that's wide open is there are too many possibilities, right? Kind of like in the early days of the internet, people are like, well, if you explain it to me, so what am I going to use that for? And then email kind of came along, and that was the initial killer application. People could wrap their head around it. And then we got into stuff like Lyft and Uber. What we're seeing is asset tracking based on the engagements that we've had and the inbound interest. That seems to be a real interest for companies, or a real problem that they're dealing with. One of the issues that they find is that if they go beyond the range of Wi-Fi, it gets really difficult to do things like asset tracking.
So that's a great number, $2 for a sensor that can transmit for miles and last for years on the batteries that come with it. That's amazing. But you introduced the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I pay for networking to the guy who owns the hub? What do you envision? And do you envision that being run by the guys who own the hub because it's decentralized and I own the hub in my area and I go around with hammers smashing other people that put hubs in or whatever. I don't, but I get a monopoly and now the people who want to put devices on the network have to have a fee much greater than telco or using their own Wi-Fi that they have wired to their house or whatever.
Yeah, so there's, so to be transparent, there's a number of different models that we're looking at, right? This is completely new, right? And so we're looking at different approaches. One approach would be you let the hotspot owners dictate the price, and then it's just supply and demand, market-driven, competition, and as a user of the network, I can choose. I can set my price, and if Matt is meeting my price, great. If not, Glenn's in the area, I can use Glenn's, right? That's one approach. The other approach is to set a certain amount that's obviously very low and kind of level the playing field and saying that is the price. Obviously, it would have to be orders of magnitude less than what a cell provider would charge. But it's kind of like the Uber model, right? As an Uber driver, I don't set the price of what the cost is, right? But it's, you know, it's a little different because Uber can do stuff like surge pricing, and they can, and it's a centralized system. They're dictating what that price is. Initially, we would say, okay, this is a price for a byte of data, and that's it. Okay.
It sounds like you still working to figure out what your customer profile is like, whether it's commercial or residential, that kind of thing.
So for the user of the network, we've broken it down into like 3 kind of what we feel target customers based on the inbound interest and conversations that we've had. And so we've categorized them into 3. One is internal, the other is commercial B2B, and the third is commercial B2C. So internal, as you can imagine, I've got my own internal use case, and I need to use it, right? I've got some, and we've got some slides that talk about it, but I've got some medical vials with cancer medication, cost $5,000 per mile, per vial. I'm worried about counterfeiting or the medicine getting compromised, so I want to be able to track it, right? That's my use case. It's important to me. Or I want to track other things, which we will see. B2B is I'm providing a service to other businesses, right? And then the last one is B2C. I want to build a smart dog collar, and it's targeted for consumers, but I'm leveraging this network. Okay. That's the third one.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So just going to share some of these use cases that we've had. I was talking to a number of folks from Charlotte. In San Francisco, in the Bay Area, you've got scooters all over the place. This last mile transportation, micromobility, there is a real race to become the next Uber or Lyft for electric scooters. And you know, Silicon Valley, they're just trying to scale as big and as fast as they possibly can. And they'll think about the operations later, or the efficiency of what I'm doing, right? Just get big to scale as quickly as I can, figure it out later. Now it's kind of catching up to them. And so we've been approached saying, hey, look, our current business model, while we're scaling fast, we're hemorrhaging a lot. And so can you help us with things like tracking our assets, which are our scooters? Because once the main unit goes down, we don't know where it is. We don't know if it's stolen or vandalized. We don't know if people are just hoarding it in a certain place, and so it's not getting used. And so can you help us attract that? So this was kind of fun. This was early testing that we did. For folks who are not familiar, that's San Francisco. And all that green are ghosts. No, all the greens are the coverage based on hotspots. And what we wanted to do was the company said, hey, look, we like your story, we like the idea, but let's start testing it. And we said, okay, let's use our alpha testnet. Let's start deploying stuff. And so this next slide is us then tracking them. And so this was just part of the test, and they said, okay, let's go. And we just drove them around, and they were very impressed. One of the guys was comparing us with Google Maps on his phone, and we were more accurate. Plus, we're not using cellular, obviously, as well. Exceeded expectations was the quote from the biz guy.
What was going on with the bridges down there? I mean, it looked like the bridges were lit up too.
Yeah, there's a couple of, not everybody lives in San Francisco, so some of the folks live across the bay. And so
Were these hotspots just Helium employees?
Friends and family. Yeah. So this is another opportunity I was talking about with, smart pet collars. Like, don't you think it's funny? Like in 2019, we're able to do stuff like map the human genome and relaunch rockets. But if your pet goes missing, you're getting a piece of paper and nailing it up onto a telephone pole. Maybe you're using Nextdoor or Facebook, right? But it's pretty primitive, right? So Petco said, hey, this is a big opportunity, but we've never been able to crack the nut in terms of the economics. Consumers, there's a certain price point that you need to stay below. You need to make it obviously very simple. But I think everybody who has a dog would say, yeah, if I could pay a small amount and put it on my collar and not have to deal with it, and I know where Fluffy is, why wouldn't I do that? So we're in talks with them. They obviously see a big demand for this type of solution. So this, I can't mention who the pharmaceutical company is, Big Pharma. If I said it, you would automatically know who it was. So they're looking at asset tracking. Once the medicine leaves the lab and until it hits the doctor's office, they don't have a lot of visibility in terms of where it is, has it been compromised. And so we're in talks of actually outfitting their vials with a small module that will be able to track their location. Yeah?
So if Helium isn't GPS per sensor, is it RSSI, and do you rely on triangulation?
That's exactly right.
And so does triangulation require you to have 3 or more hubs in the neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's the exact number. So we would have a density of at least 3, and it would be using time difference of arrival to then triangulate the location. Absolutely. Yep.
So all of these have been location sensing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you actually sending anything other than location sensing with these? Or?
You sense whatever, you can send whatever you like.
Okay.
Environmental, heat, temperature, air quality. This was just because, as I said, like IoT is so big and there's so many different applications. This was just a way to kind of narrow it down and help visualize kind of the tangible benefits of this network. But yes, any type of data that you want to send is all good. And not only that, and thank you for bringing it up, but not only can we send data, but you can also push data down for OTAs, OTA updates, and also for pushing commands to an actuator and stuff.
Are you're using blockchain to identify specific sensors, correct? Does it also encrypt the message itself?
No. So we're using blockchain in a couple ways. One is, I mentioned, for the incentive model. The other way is anytime that a machine connects to a hotspot, that data gets recorded to the blockchain. So the time and location. So if you want to do an audit of the device. And the other one is, you can think of it like getting rid of like identity access management. So anytime you onboard a machine, it gets added to the ID gets added to the blockchain, and so it doesn't need to re-authenticate if it's going to all these different hotspots. Now the data from the sensor is not added to the blockchain. The data from the sensor is encrypted from edge to cloud.
Okay.
But that's not getting added to the blockchain. That's your data. We don't want to deal with it for a couple of reasons. One is for privacy. The blockchain is public, right?
Yes.
And the second one is you would increase the storage needed to put all that data on the blockchain very quickly.
Okay.
Good question. So we talked about this. So this is kind of, imagine if you will, this kind of goes back to, we're living in 2019. There's this big technology divide, like with wildfires. I don't know, you may have heard in California we had some wildfire problems.
Yeah.
But right, for a big part of these, like for smoke jumpers to know where to go and try to contain the fire as quickly as possible, they're still relying on people calling in and saying, hey, I think I see smoke over the hills. But what if you could create an early detection wildfire system, right? Get a bunch of cheap sensors, solar powered, put them out in strategic locations based on where the county said would be good.
Don't start any fires.
Don't start any fires, of course. And then just leave it out there. And once that sensor exceeds a certain threshold, then go investigate, right?
In a case like that, where would you look at? Would you look at partnering with the municipal authorities, et cetera, for siting? I mean, there's not. I mean, obviously, California has a lot of residents in some of those areas, unfortunately, but a lot of it is wilderness and hills.
Yeah. So we would, ideally, we would be working with the county and the fire folks to say, hey, look, strategically, where are the right places, and then figure out a solution.
What did you say the range was?
I didn't.
I didn't think so.
Is that a couple square miles, a few square miles of coverage, but that's...
And here's the reason why, and that is probably, like if I had $1 for every time I got that question,
okay.
I don't know if I'd be up here standing presenting to you guys. The answer is 26.5 miles. No, I'm just joking. It depends, right? Sure. Because you've got areas that are dense, like San Francisco in the financial district, and then you've got rural areas, line of sight, where you can see for miles, right? Sure. So I'm not being flippant, just having a bit of fun.
That's fine.
That is a very common question that we get.
Yeah.
And we have seen miles and miles of range, even in urban settings, but it really depends. So we have we've been working on our alpha testnet, and so we've been launching in a number of cities, using friends and family, Helium employees to plug it in, test it. Still going through a lot of the testing phase right now. And this is what our roadmap looks like. So we're looking at launching initially in May. So in May, these will go for sale online. Austin is going to be our launch city, so we've been doing a lot of work in Austin. Don't ask why Austin, not Charlotte, okay? No, there's a number of reasons why Austin. We like it there. It's really nice. Good food. And so the first shipments of these hotspots will initially go to Austin. We've got both sides of the market built up there. So we've got a lot of people who want to deploy hotspots, and we've got a number of businesses that we're working with that will actually provide usage. In June, we'll have dev kits available so people can start playing with this, start building applications on it. And then in Q4, then we do this really big everything kind of launch. Yep.
So the going back to the it depends question or answer, when you go to market, it really
we'll just lie.
That's not you're gonna have to quantify it, or you're gonna have to compare it to some other technologies that people have quantified.
Yeah. Definitely.
And have you started doing that? Have you sent this out to the Austrian, the Swedish guy that tests RF and has little Wi-Fi stuff going for miles and?
Yeah. So in preparation and getting stuff like FCC certified and all that stuff, we're working with a number of third-party external testers. Yeah, and look, you can set it up in optimal conditions, so you'll get as maximum range with just a little bit of data, and that's probably what we'll use for our marketing. Put us in the best light that we possibly can.
That's what we expect.
So this is a prototyping module that we're working on right now. If you want to come up later and take a look at it, here it is. So when we were working with some of those mobility companies, this is the actual module that they're using. So it does have currently it does have a GPS chip on it. but the goal is in later iterations, with enough density, you wouldn't even need the GPS chip. So you cut down on costs and cut down on battery usage as well. Oops. Okay, so I kicked this off. You know, I got all existential on you guys, talked about this big race. And, you know, I'm in marketing, so that's, you know, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? But, you know, we actually believe this is what's going to happen. So, like, you know, you see all these ads about 5G and how 5G can do everything from curing cancer and connecting this and that. Yeah, I mean, these guys, these companies are, you know, they are looking at this huge opportunity like everybody else. And if, you know, look, if it's not Helium, it's another decentralized wireless network. We think a community-built and owned approach is much better than having AT&T or one of these other guys who can throttle data, who can censor things, single point of failure, single point of attack. I think it's a better approach.
So how much coverage do you estimate you can actually get? I mean, even at full deployment, and I'm thinking in terms of asset tracking, cold chain,
yeah,
some of those kind of use cases. You know, you flew over an awful lot of empty space between San Francisco and Charlotte. I used to fly over it a couple of times a year myself.
Yeah.
You know, trucks go through there all the time carrying all this kind of stuff, and there's nobody there.
Yeah.
For hundreds of miles.
Sure. And so, you know, we are looking at rollout like very strategically. So identifying those key cities where we see a lot of interest from people who want to deploy hotspots, and then also that other side of the marketplace where you see a lot of use cases that could use the network. So we'll focus on cities mostly, and we've got a number of key strategic cities that we will focus on. And then if a big company says, hey, look, we love it, but there's a big gap in between wherever, we'll think of a solution to then, you know, address that gap.
Makes sense. Because like you said, scooters, and there's a lot of things in metros, that's where most of the money is, but most of the money also travels between them.
Yeah, and then we would say, look, like, how often do you need data coming from that truck, right? And the thing about one of the advantages of the system is the flexibility. And they say, look, okay, you've got this big blind spot in this area, you know, maybe Helium will deploy it if the deal is big enough. Maybe we will focus on incenting certain people or provide promotions or what have you. There's a number of tools that we can use to address those coverage gaps, but the main point is that it's very easy to deploy these and address them, rather than, oh, how do we build towers or do something there? Yeah.
So perhaps you're in advance of deploying, so you can't answer this question, and that's fine.
Assume I can't.
But assuming you can, how do you plan to address with your customer set monetizing them buying a hub to deploy your network?
Yeah. So the idea is that companies that are looking to use the network, they actually shouldn't have to buy these. Right? The idea is that if there's enough Matts and enough Glens, then me as a company trying to address my own internal use case, great. I don't need to worry about it. Now, we're pragmatic because we feel, okay, initially, maybe we don't have the coverage that we need for the spots that there's high demand. And so in that situation, again, we've got a number of tools. We can provide promotions, we can partner with businesses, or worst case scenario, we could deploy a bunch of these if the use case is appealing enough. Now, we don't want to do that because, again, we want to keep it decentralized and community. If we could go and deploy a whole bunch of these, but that's really not what we want to do. And we wouldn't have had to do all that work for blockchain and incentivizing people and all that stuff, right? But then people are like, well, what happens if Helium goes out of business? And
and also it seems your network is location, location, location. So those people who own tall buildings are likely going to be your proof of area, or what you called it.
Proof of coverage?
Proof of coverage, because, you know, this Swiss guy goes up to the top of a mountain, he puts his sensor up there, and he can talk to it for miles.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
we're very happy to talk to people in tall buildings.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you know some, let us know. But just to get back, I have one more slide and then I'll open it up. But just to get back to your point, ideally, there's enough coverage that businesses do not even have to worry about these. They worry about their sensors, they worry about the data, they analyze the data, because that's what they want to do. Now, initially, there may be certain situations where they say, you know what, I love your idea, I can't wait, so I'm just going to buy a couple of these, I'll plug it in, and you know, I'll address it, right? And maybe we even end up buying it back from them. Who knows, right? So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so one more. So we do believe this is a different approach. We do believe it's going to take a community in order to really build out this network. If you're curious and you want to participate, you can go to the website, put your name on the wait list. There's no obligation. You don't have to put in your credit card or anything. It's just go, sign up. Here's where I am. I'm interested. Put in the number of hotspots. And we will legally hold you to it. No, it's fine. It's just showing a preference. And if you are willing to participate, we got a bunch of these t-shirts. So anybody who wants to, you don't have to do it now, I trust you. If you say, you know what, sounds like a cool idea, I want to participate, then just come and see me and you guys can pick up t-shirts. Really good quality, 2 different colors. Colors won't run. Sorry, this gentleman had a question.
I was curious about what frequency band you were at.
Yep, so we are sub-gigahertz. So in the US it's 900 and something megahertz, unlicensed spectrum. Now the cool thing about these is we said there's a software-defined radio, so if we choose to go to Europe where it's like 800 and something, or China or Australia where it's like, actually I think Australia's 900 something as well, it's just a firmware update, right? So yeah, thanks.
How's it different than LoRa?
So bring it back to LoRa. If you look at it from a kind of pure technology in terms of connectivity, it's actually pretty similar, right? LoRa, I mean, for certain stuff, LoRa works well. It's just a very different approach, right? So all this stuff is built on commodity hardware. We're open sourcing the software, the firmware, all the designs. LoRa says they're open, but then you have to use Syntec chipsets, right? That's true, right? And then another thing is there are certain capabilities that LoRa will try to charge you for, like timestamp stuff, and they're just a very different business model, right? They're like business 1.0 that says, okay, we're going to sell you this stuff, but you have to use a certain chipset, you can manufacture it, you can only use ours. And because we're in that type of model, you know, we need to squeeze as much as we can out of these units, and so we will charge you for certain capabilities, right? We think that's like kind of horse and buggy type of old school way to do business. Everything's open. We are initially manufacturing these, but we don't want to be in the hardware manufacturing business. So we actually are hoping that somebody who really knows well how to manufacture at scale takes these on and runs with it. Another thing is, let's say Matt has got, let's start with LoRa. So Matt's got a LoRa gateway and he's got his coverage, and then Glenn does as well, and they're neighbors, but those devices can't use those different gateways, right? if they both are deploying Helium hotspots or Helium compatible hotspots, those devices can connect to any Helium compatible hotspot.
Well,
They've already been...
Laura's got a gateway model where you hub into an internet backbone and you can exchange data with any LoRa too. So, and I imagine that's what you're doing as well. So it's the exact same.
Well, no, the way that we're doing it is we're using our blockchain. So any device that gets onboarded, the ID gets added to the blockchain as a trusted device. And that's how we're avoiding that having to re-authenticate. So I haven't looked at LoRa stuff for a while. I don't think they have a blockchain.
I'm sure I could get into an hours-long discussion with you on blockchain and what you're doing and where I see perceived weaknesses in using blockchain models. You know, I've seen the most successful blockchain discussions have been private blockchains, which isn't a blockchain.
Right.
And
it's just a database.
Right. Yeah, and then when people start talking about the public blockchain, I always see advantages for people who have profit motives in installing the blockchain. Yeah. So I have a lot of questions about blockchain, and then I would get specific about your technologies and how you're going to apply your blockchain.
Sure.
So, you know, you can say blockchain. I look at it as I'm just saying, oh, it's great and it's good and stuff. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah, but I mean, right now it's hype, okay?
Yeah.
Until it's proven successfully and what have you.
100%. If you noticed on this deck, there wasn't a slide that said we use blockchain, right? And we purposely did that because, like you were calling out, and rightly so, a lot of companies have tried to ride on the blockchain hype coattails.
Yeah.
And that's, if we could have done it without using blockchain, we would have done it.
The reason I said that is because you just a second before answered my LoRa Gateway answer with, we've got blockchain.
Well, that is...
LoRa Gateway guys can conspire together to have their own consensus model of trust and be cryptographically secure just like you. Yeah. And they can talk to each other completely securely and have an onboarding technique. So
it's not that,
you having blockchain doesn't give you an advantage over cryptography. You know.
Well, the cryptography is part of the blockchain.
Well, yes, but you don't.
But just to go back to what you mentioned, you could, if we started an hour-long discussion, I think everybody here would be
I'm sure they would.
Either leaving or throwing something at me, probably.
No, we throw a mic. We've got practice.
But love the enthusiasm. If you go to our webpage, we do have a white paper where a lot of folks, a lot smarter than I did, wrote about all the math involved. And if we could have leveraged another blockchain, it would have been so much easier. We had to build our own. And that was not a trivial effort. Okay, yep.
You become a host, you get a hotspot, and you get blockchains coming through because of people using. How do you monetize those blockchains that are in your hotspot?
So there's two. If you're a hotspot host, there's two ways that you will get rewarded, right? One is just by providing wireless coverage, you can mine tokens and earn those tokens. The other is every time a machine connects to your hotspot to send data, then you also get rewarded as well.
But how do you spend those tokens?
Yeah, so the idea is that these tokens will get traded on a third-party exchange, and then you will convert them, like you do for Bitcoin or something.
So is this company funded through ICO or?
No, we do not have an ICO. The company was funded by Google Ventures, by Coastal Ventures, First Mark Benioff, and a number of VCs back in 2013, so Series B funding. Yep.
Where's the name Helium come from?
Yeah, I asked my CEO that, and I didn't get a huge, first noble gas, right? Second common element. The domain name was available, right?
There you go. It works.
Yeah. So thank you very much for sticking around. If you want to sign up, again, here's where you sign up. I got t-shirts for folks who are interested. Yeah, and again, thank you to Graham, to Dan. Hey, Dan, thank you for inviting us to Charlotte IoT Meetup. This is the first time that we've been here. Hopefully we can, this is just the start of a relationship, and we really appreciate you guys coming out. Sure. Thanks a lot.